The wind on Oakhaven didn't howl, it hissed. It was a low, serpentine sound that cut through the canyons of red rock and rusted iron, stripping the paint off the mining equipment and the hope off the men who worked it. It was a hateful place, a rock floating in the dark, forgotten by the civilized core worlds left to rot on the edge of the frontier. Ronin sat on the porch of what passed for the colony's supply depot. He was a statue carved from granite and old leather. His duster coat was stained with the dust of a dozen worlds. The hem tattered, the color faded to a nondescript gray. He sat with his back to the wall, one leg extended, the other bent, his hand resting casually near his hip. To a casual observer, he looked like he was sleeping. He wasn't. Ronin was listening. He was listening to the rhythm of the colony. The grinding of the ore crushers in the distance. The coughing of a generator that was 2 weeks past its maintenance cycle. The murmurs of the miners inside the depot, talking in hushed tones about quotas and starvation. He was an old dog in a young man's war. His face was a map of hard roads traveled. Deep lines cut across his forehead, and his beard was the color of iron filings, coarse and gray. His eyes, hidden beneath the brim of a wide, battered hat, were scanning the horizon. He wasn't waiting for a friend. Men like Ronin didn't have friends. They had contacts, they had liabilities, and occasionally they had targets. Today he was waiting for the Syndicate. The miners called them the Company. Ronin knew them for what they were, warlords in suits. They didn't use flags or anthems, they used debt and contracts. They squeezed places like Oakhaven until they popped, then swept up the pieces. A young man stepped out of the depot, Jax. He was the colony's mechanic. A kid with grease under his fingernails and a fire in his belly that hadn't been extinguished yet. He held 2 tin cups of coffee. It smelled like burnt rubber, but out here, heat was a luxury. "They're late," Jax said, handing a cup to Ronin. Ronin took it. His hands were large, the knuckles swollen from years of breaking things that didn't want to be broken. He didn't sip immediately. He just held the warmth. "They aren't late," Ronin said. His voice was a low rumble, like gravel shifting in a mixer. "They're letting you sweat. It's part of the theater." "Theater?" Jax spat on the ground. "They're going to cut our rations again. People are already getting sick. Ilara used the last of the med stims yesterday on Old Man Miller." Ronin looked at the boy. "Ilara is the medic. Yeah, she's the best we got." Jax's voice softened when he said her name. Ronin noted the tone. It was the tone of a man who had something to lose. That was dangerous. In a firefight, love made you hesitate, or it made you reckless. "You hold the line, son," Ronin said, taking a slow sip of the bitter black liquid. "Panic does the enemy's work for him. You stay calm, you stay ready. I've never held a gun against a soldier," Jax admitted, looking at his own hands. "A gun is just a tool," Ronin said. "Like a wrench, the weapon is the man holding it. If your mind is right, the rest follows. If your mind is weak, a cannon won't save you." It was a lesson from a different time. A time before the automated drone wars, before the algorithms fought the battles. Ronin came from the era of mud and blood, where you looked a man in the eye before you put him down. There are few men left who remember what that weight feels like. If you are one of them, you know that technology changes, but war never changes. A sound cut through the wind. A deep thrumming vibration that was felt in the teeth before it was heard in the ears. Ronin set the cup down, he stood up. His joints clicked, a reminder of high-gravity drops and long marches, but his movement was fluid. "They're here," Ronin said. The Syndicate dropship was a monstrosity of chrome and black steel. It descended from the copper sky like a judgment, its thrusters kicking up a storm of red dust that blinded the miners gathering in the square. It didn't land. It conquered the ground, crushing the gravel beneath its massive landing struts. The ramp hissed open, steam vented into the dry air. Out marched the shock troopers, 4 of them. They were faceless, their heads encased in smooth, sensor-laden helmets. Their armor was pristine, white and sterile, a stark contrast to the grime of Oakhaven. They carried plasma repeaters, weapons that cooked the air as they hummed with power. Then came the Overseer. He was a man who had clearly never worked a day of manual labor in his life. His uniform was tailored, his boots polished to a mirror shine. He walked with the arrogance of a man who believes he owns the air he breathes. He stepped onto the dirt of Oakhaven as if he were doing it a favor. The miners huddled together, a sea of gray rags and tired faces. They were terrified. Ronin stayed back in the shadow of the depot's overhang. He watched. He assessed 4 guards, standard formation, 2 on point, 2 flanking the VIP. The Overseer is left-handed. His holster is on his left hip. The guards are relying on their HUDs, not their eyes. Typical, they trust the machine too much. The Overseer stopped in the center of the square. He surveyed the crowd with a sneer. "Citizens of Oakhaven," the Overseer announced. His voice was amplified, booming off the canyon walls. "I am Overseer Vance. I am here to audit your production." The crowd murmured. An audit meant starvation. "We have noticed," Vance continued, walking slowly along the line of miners. "Missing inventory. Medical supplies. Fuel cells. Unauthorized repairs." He stopped in front of Alara. She was young, with hair the color of wheat and eyes that burned with defiance. She stood straight despite the fear radiating off the people around her. "People were dying," Alara said. Her voice shook, but she didn't step back. "We have a right to survive," Vance laughed. It was a cold, dry sound. "You have the right to produce. Survival is a privilege earned through quotas, and you are behind." Vance snapped his fingers. 2 of the guards moved. They were fast, enhanced by servos in their armor. They grabbed Alara. She struggled, but against the powered armor, she was like a child fighting a statue. "No!" Jack shouted. The boy broke from the crowd. He had a heavy wrench in his hand. It was brave, it was foolish. One of the guards backhanded him without even looking. The metal gauntlet connected with Jax's face, sending him sprawling into the dust. Blood sprayed from his lip. Jax tried to get up, scrambling in the dirt, spitting blood. "Let her go!" The guard leveled his plasma rifle at Jax's chest. The hum of the weapon charging was a high-pitched whine that signaled death. "Bring him to," Vance ordered. "We'll make an example of the mechanic and the medic. Let the colony see the price of theft." The guards dragged them to the center of the square. They forced them to their knees. Jax, dizzy and bleeding, reached out. Alara reached back, their fingers locked together. They held on. In a galaxy that tears everything apart, holding on is an act of rebellion. It's the kind of grit that built nations. It's the kind of loyalty that doesn't show up on a spreadsheet. Ronin adjusted his hat. He stepped out of the shadows. The sound of Ronin's boots on the hard-packed earth was heavy. Crunch, crunch, crunch. It was a slow, deliberate cadence. It drew the eye. Vance turned. The guards shifted their aim, their sensors trying to identify the threat. "Who are you?" Vance demanded. "This is Syndicate business. Walk away, old man, or die where you stand." Ronin didn't stop until he was 10 paces away. The perfect distance. Close enough for a pistol, far enough to force the rifles to traverse. "Name's Ronin," he said. His voice carried without shouting. It had the weight of a judge's gavel. "Ronin," Vance repeated, tasting the name. "The mercenary. I heard the colony hired a protector. I expected more." "I'm not a mercenary," Ronin corrected. "I'm a contractor, and you're damaging my employers." Vance looked at Ronin's gear, the worn leather. The ballistic revolver on his hip, a kinetic weapon, ancient by modern standards. "You're a relic," Vance scoffed. "Look at you, you're carrying a slug thrower. My men are wearing kinetic dampening armor. Your bullets will bounce off like rain. You are obsolete." Ronin didn't smile. He didn't frown, he just stared. "I'm here to negotiate the release of the prisoners," Ronin said. Vance looked at Jax and Alara, kneeling in the dirt, still holding hands. He smiled, a cruel idea forming in his mind. "Negotiate? Very well. I am a reasonable man." Vance walked over to the prisoners. He pulled a sleek chrome pistol from his holster. He pointed it at the back of Jax's head. "Here is the deal, Ronin. Since you are so keen on saving them." Vance looked at the crowd, playing to his audience. "You are one man, I have a squad. You cannot win, so I will offer you a choice, a mercy." He nudged Alara with his boot. "Take the girl, she goes free. But the boy dies for attacking a Syndicate officer." Jack squeezed Alara's hand. "No," he whispered, "take her. Go." "Or," Vance continued, swinging the gun to point at Alara, "take the boy, we need mechanics. But the girl, she stays with me. She has caused too much trouble. She needs to be re-educated." The wind picked up, whipping dust around them. "One walks, one stays," Vance said. "That is the offer. You have 10 seconds to choose who lives. If you try anything else, my guards will slaughter everyone in this square." The silence stretched, it was heavy, suffocating. Ronin looked at the couple. He saw the terror in their eyes, but he also saw the resolve. They weren't letting go. They were ready to die together rather than be separated. It takes a lifetime to understand the value of that kind of bond. When you're young, you think you fight for glory. When you get older, you realize you fight for the person standing next to you. That is the only truth that matters in the end. 5 seconds, Vance shouted. Tick-tock, relic, make the hard call. That's what you soldiers do, isn't it? Calculus of war? Ronin's hand hovered inches from his hip. He wasn't looking at Vance anymore. He was looking at the guards. He was calculating the geometry of the fight. Guard 1, twitchy trigger finger. Guard 2, scanning the rooftops. Guard 3 and 4 focused on me. Armor has weak points at the neck seal and the knee joints. Vance is arrogant. He's standing in the open. Time's up, Vance sneered. Choose. Ronin looked Vance in the eye. The look was devoid of fear. It was the cold, hard stare of a man who had looked death in the face 1,000 times and never blinked. Both, Ronin said. Vance blinked. What? Both, Ronin repeated. His voice dropped, becoming a growl. Or no deal. Vance's face reddened. You senile fool. You are not in a position to make demands. You take one or I kill them both and then I kill you. Those are the terms. Wrong terms, Ronin said. Kill him, Vance screamed. The moment stretched. The synapses fired. Vance expected Ronin to draw. He expected a desperate, flailing attempt to outshoot 4 men. He didn't expect the world to explode. Ronin didn't reach for his gun. He tapped his belt buckle once, boom. The explosion didn't come from Ronin. It came from the Syndicate dropship sitting 50 yards away. Ronin had been sitting on that porch for 2 hours. He hadn't just been drinking coffee. He'd been watching the fuel lines. A simple, remote-detonated charge, planted by a drone the size of a hummingbird before the Overseer even walked down the ramp. The rear strut of the dropship collapsed. The massive vessel groaned, tilted, and then slammed into the ground, its fuel reserves igniting in a fireball that roared toward the heavens. The ground shook violently. The shockwave knocked the miners flat. The guards turned. For a split second, that fatal amateur split second, they looked at the explosion instead of their target. They were distracted by the spectacle. Ronin was not, he moved. It wasn't the speed of youth. It was the economy of mastery. No wasted energy, no flourish. His hand blurred. The Peacemaker, a heavy custom-bored revolver chambered for armor-piercing tungsten rounds, cleared leather. Crack. The sound was distinct. It wasn't the pew-pew of a laser. It was the roar of gunpowder in physics. The first round caught the guard on the left in the throat, right where the helmet seal met the chest piece. The kinetic energy snapped his head back. He dropped before he heard the shot. Crack. Crack. Ronin fanned the hammer. 2 shots. The second guard took one to the knee, shattering the servo and the bone, and a second to the visor as he fell. Vance was screaming, scrambling back, raising his chrome pistol. Ronin didn't pivot his feet. He twisted his hips, a turret of flesh and bone. The remaining 2 guards opened fire. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air. One singed the edge of Ronin's duster, setting the leather smoking. Another grazed his left shoulder, cauterizing the flesh instantly. Ronin didn't flinch, he didn't grunt. He absorbed the pain and converted it into focus. Pain is just information. It tells you you're still alive. He fired again, crack. The third guard's rifle exploded in his hands as Ronin's bullet struck the power cell. The guard was engulfed in blue flame. Vance fired wildly, panic destroying his aim. Die, just die. Ronin advanced. He walked through the smoke and the dust like a phantom. He leveled the heavy revolver at Vance. Vance aimed at Ronin's chest. Ronin fired first. He didn't shoot to kill, he shot the gun. The tungsten slug slammed into Vance's chrome pistol. The impact was massive. It shattered the weapon and the force traveled up Vance's arm, snapping the wrist and dislocating the elbow. Vance shrieked, clutching his ruined arm, falling to his knees in the dirt. The same dirt he had forced Jax and Alara into. The last guard, seeing his commander down and his squad decimated, hesitated. He looked at Ronin. Ronin stood amidst the carnage. Smoke curled from the barrel of his gun. Blood trickled down his left arm. His face was granite. "Walk away," Ronin commanded. The guard looked at the burning ship. He looked at the dead men. He looked at the old man who refused to die. The guard dropped his rifle. He raised his hands. He backed away, turned, and ran into the Badlands. Ronin holstered his weapon. The silence returned to Oakhaven, heavier than before. Ronin didn't celebrate. He didn't offer a witty one-liner. He walked over to Jax and Alara. They were staring up at him, trembling, their hands still locked together. He pulled a knife from his boot, a serrated blade of high-carbon steel. He knelt down. "Hold still," he said. He sliced through the zip cuffs binding them. "You're hurt," Alara said, looking at the burn on Ronin's shoulder. I need to treat that. Later, Ronin said. He stood up and looked at the sky. That ship sent a distress beacon the second it exploded. Reinforcements will be here in an hour. Gunships. We can't be here when they arrive. He looked at Vance, who was weeping in the dust, cradling his broken arm. Please, Vance whimpered. Please don't leave me here. They'll kill me for failing. Ronin looked down at the man. There was no pity in his eyes. Only judgment. You offered a choice, Ronin said. One or the other. I made my choice. I chose them. Ronin turned his back. Grab your gear, he told Jax. We're heading for the ridge. The atmosphere interference there will mask our heat signatures. The ridge, Jax stammered. That's 20 miles of salt flats and razor rock. We'll never make it before nightfall. Then we walk fast, Ronin said. Move. They left the settlement. The miners watched them go, a mixture of awe and fear in their eyes. Ronin led the way, setting a pace that was punishing. They walked for hours. The suns beat down, turning the rocks into ovens. Jax and Alara struggled, but they kept moving. Ronin didn't slow down. He marched with the relentless rhythm of a machine. By late afternoon, they reached the edge of the salt flats. It was a white, blinding expanse of nothingness. We need to rest, Jax gasped, bending over, hands on his knees. Just for a minute, Ronin stopped. He didn't sit. He scanned the horizon with a pair of electro-binoculars. 2 minutes, Ronin said. Drink water, don't gulp it. Sip. Alara moved to Ronin. She had her medical kit. Let me look at your shoulder. Ronin nodded. She peeled back the burnt leather of his coat. The flesh was angry, red and black. It was a nasty wound. This needs synth flesh, she said, cleaning it with antiseptic. Does it hurt? Yes, Ronin said simply. You don't show it. Doesn't help to show it, Ronin replied. He looked at the boy. You did good back there, son. Jax looked up, surprised. I got hit, I couldn't stop them. You stood up, Ronin said. Most men wouldn't have done that. Most men would have looked at their boots and hoped to be invisible. You stood up for her. Ronin looked at the horizon. A black speck was moving against the sun. Drone, Ronin said quietly. Scout class. They're hunting. What do we do? Alara asked, fear creeping back into her voice. We disappear, Ronin said. There's an old canyon 2 clicks east. Magnetic deposits in the rock, it'll blind their sensors. But we have to run, they ran. The drone buzzed overhead, a mechanical vulture waiting for the kill. They reached the canyon mouth just as the drone fired a marking dart. It missed Jax by inches. Inside, Ronin shouted. They scrambled into the shadows of the canyon. The walls were high, narrow, and composed of iron-heavy rock that interfered with electronics. Did we lose it? Jax asked, his chest heaving. For now, Ronin said. But it marked our location. The gunship is coming. He looked at the canyon. It was a dead end. A box canyon. Ronin stopped. He looked at the walls. He looked at the entrance. This is it, Ronin said. We stop running here. We're trapped, Jax said, panic rising. We're not trapped, Ronin said calmly. We're dug in. There's a difference. He began moving rocks, creating a low breastwork near a narrow choke point in the canyon. Son, take this. Ronin handed Jax a spare power pack for the revolver. When I tell you, you toss this into the air. High as you can. Why? Just do it. The roar of engines filled the canyon. A Syndicate gunship, a heavy assault craft, hovered over the rim. It was too big to fit inside, but its side-mounted cannons began to spin. Get down, Ronin roared. He pushed Jax and Alara behind a large boulder, just as the cannons opened up. Rock shards exploded everywhere, the noise was deafening. The gunship couldn't get a lock because of the magnetic interference, so it was spraying and praying. They're going to suppress us and drop troops. Ronin yelled over the noise. Get ready! Ropes dropped from the gunship. 4 more elite troopers slid down into the canyon floor. They hit the ground running, moving tactically toward Ronin's position. Ronin checked his weapon, 3 rounds left. He reloaded swiftly, his hands moving with muscle memory honed over 40 years. 6 fresh tungsten rounds slid into the cylinder. Click, 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 now! Ronin shouted, throw it! Jax stood up and hurled the power pack into the air, over the heads of the advancing troopers. The troopers' HUDs automatically tracked the fast-moving object, identifying it as a grenade. They scrambled for cover, diving away. It wasn't a grenade, it was a distraction. Ronin broke cover. He stood tall in the narrow canyon, a silhouette against the dust. He fired. He didn't aim at the troopers. He aimed at the canyon wall above them. There was a massive, unstable slab of rock hanging there, weakened by centuries of erosion. Bang, 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 3 rounds hammered into the fissure holding the slab. The rock groaned, gravity took over. Tons of granite sheared off the canyon wall. The troopers looked up just in time to see the mountain coming down on them. The crash was earth-shattering. Dust billowed out like a tidal wave, engulfing everything. Silence returned, minutes passed. The dust settled slowly. The gunship, seeing its ground team buried and unable to get a sensor lock, peeled off. Fuel was low and the risk was too high. They abandoned the hunt. Ronin stood up from the rubble. He was covered in gray dust, looking like a ghost of the old world. Jax and Alara crawled out from behind the boulder. They coughed, waving the dust away. They looked at the pile of rocks where the enemy had been. "You brought the mountain down," Jax whispered. "Terrain is a weapon," Ronin said, holstering his gun. "Never forget that." He walked over to them. He looked tired now. The adrenaline was fading, leaving only the ache of old bones and fresh wounds. "We're clear," Ronin said. "My ship is hidden in the caves at the end of this canyon. I'll take you off-world, to the neutral zones." "You saved us," Alara said. She reached out and took Ronin's hand. Her skin was soft against his callous, scarred palm. "Why, you could have walked away. You could have taken the deal." Ronin looked at her hand, then at Jax. "I told you," Ronin said. "I don't leave things behind." He adjusted his hat, shading his eyes. "There's a lot of noise in this galaxy, miss. A lot of people talking about the greater good and acceptable losses. They want you to believe that principles are expensive, that they're a luxury for the old days." He looked at Jax. "But when you look at a man who is willing to sacrifice half his soul to save his skin, you aren't looking at a man. You're looking at a coward with a calculator." Ronin tapped his chest. "I sleep at night. It might be on the ground, it might be in the cold, but I sleep. Because I know I didn't leave anyone in the dark who was counting on me. There are things in this life that you can't buy and you can't fake. Integrity is one of them. It's a heavy coat to wear in the heat, but it keeps you warm when the winter comes. And the winter is always coming." "Let's go home," Ronin said. They reached Ronin's ship. It was an old hauler, scarred and ugly, but the engines purred with a deep, reliable rhythm. As Jax and Alara boarded, Jax stopped at the ramp. He turned to Ronin. "Are you coming with us?" "I'll drop you off," Ronin said. "Then I have to come back." "Back here?" Jax asked, incredulous. "Why, Vance will be hunting you. The whole Syndicate will be hunting you." Ronin looked back toward the direction of the colony. "There are 500 other families in Oakhaven," Ronin said. "Vance is still alive and he's going to be angry." Ronin checked his revolver one last time. "I started a job," Ronin said. "I intend to finish it." "You'll die," Jax said. "Maybe," Ronin shrugged. "But I won't die on my knees." He clapped a hand on Jax's shoulder. It was a heavy, reassuring weight. "Take care of her, son. Hold the line." "Yes, sir," Jax said. He stood straighter. He looked less like a mechanic and more like a soldier. Ronin watched the ramp close. He watched the ship lift off, its thrusters burning blue against the darkening sky. He watched until it was just a star among stars. He was alone again. Just the dust, the wind, and the enemy waiting in the dark. Ronin turned back toward the town. He began the long walk back. Some men say the age of heroes is over. They say the galaxy is too big, too complex, too corrupt for one man to make a difference. They say you have to compromise to survive. Maybe they're right, but as long as there are men like Ronin walking the Badlands, men who refuse to bend, refuse to break, and refuse to choose the easy path, there is still hope. You don't need an army to stop tyranny. You just need one man who plants his feet, draws his line, and says no further. If you're that kind of man, welcome to the fight.